everyone, and welcome back to the Philosophy of Fitness podcast. My name is Haley. I'm going to be your host today, and every single day that you are tuning in, my friends. Today, I am joined with Zach Tyler. He is the creator of the Instagram account Behavior Hack, if you're familiar with it, and he's also the owner of a event rental company called Peak Photo Booths. So he has a really interesting background. We had such an incredible conversation, and I learned so much about his journey of what has led him to where he is. He's actually had a lot of injuries as well that he really went into as being a part of his story. But we had an incredible conversation and also just some insights into the entrepreneurial mindset and how fitness has really played a role in his passion for that. And he offers up some of his advice as well, some of his mindset perspective that I think is really interesting and refreshing to hear. So if you guys are interested in hearing our conversation, then you know what to do. Go ahead and stay tuned. Today, I am joined with Zach Tyler, the creator of Behavior Hack. He's an entrepreneur. He's an amazing guy. I've been following you for a while, Zach. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm so excited for this.
Thank you for having me on, Haley. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So I've been following you. I think I started following you back in the middle of the pandemic. And I was like, wow, this is such an amazing account. I didn't really know the face behind it. But I feel like we're very aligned in terms of, mindset, motivation, and discipline and all that kind of stuff. So I am so excited to have you on. And I think a great place to start would honestly be just, your journey. Like, what was it that led you kind of like to where you are now? Like, have you always been into fitness or?
Yeah, sure. So I'll give a quick backstory. I guess you could say I was always into fitness. I grew up playing soccer. We're actually both from Long Island, and I grew up in like the big soccer culture here, and played in some pretty competitive leagues growing up. And then I went to college, and I was playing at Binghamton University, upstate, and basically I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. It was just I was growing up playing soccer, and so all right, everyone's going to play college soccer, so am I. And so I went there, and unfortunately what happened is I had a series of pretty bad injuries right when I started college. So I went in with a pretty bad, I think it was a broken wrist. And so I was playing with a cast, and I wasn't really, I wasn't playing much. I was just practicing. And then it's pretty funny, actually, a little like morbid, but not morbid, but a few weeks in, I was practicing, and I was always like a pretty not dirty, but like tough player going to tackles. And I like tore a ligament in my other hand. So just imagine me skinny. Yeah. So just imagine like a skinny, awkward freshman walking around the cafeteria with like two casts on. That was me in college. So stuff like that. Yeah. And then basically just go quickly. I had that. And then the next year I broke my nose really badly. And again, playing soccer, had to get surgery, and then had to choose between staying at Binghamton, which was a great school, good soccer program, or transferring and playing soccer somewhere else. And I love the sport so much; it was my whole life. And so I actually transferred, and then I transferred to this other school, another Division I school in Connecticut. It was going pretty well there, and then a few weeks in, had a really bad. The story gets better, I promise.
Yeah, but, so prone to injury. Oh my gosh.
I know. I had a really bad break in my quad, like my rectus femoris, which is like biggest tendon in your quad, was just like gone. So at that point, it was 3 years, and I was basically like, all right, I can't keep sitting on a bench hurt. I have to change something. So that was where my whole, soccer is. It's, I guess you can include it with fitness, but like that's where like working out and weightlifting especially. I really fell in love with it. Was after that transition happened from basically when that last injury happened, I decided I couldn't do that anymore. And so I left the team, I left that school for a little bit, and then I came home. And what happened was I basically went from being, I was a freshman at a great school, great soccer program at Binghamton. And now I was going to, Suffolk Community College, which is nothing wrong with that, but there's nothing wrong with that at all. But, for me, it was tough at the time. And so I was home for one semester, and that was where I really started working out. And I talked about on my page a little bit, but that was like by far the most transformative period of my life, was where basically I went from having, all this set up, great school, great soccer program. And then basically now I'm home, my home life wasn't great. My parents were like fighting a lot, and then I just had me in the gym, and that was where everything really started to kind of change.
That is a crazy journey. I can't even believe just the amount of injuries, it's just like back to back to back. That's insane.
It's funny though. Yeah. And the way I look at it though, it's like, so like, I look at a lot of my life this way, and it's like with the injuries I had and some other stuff growing up, which like, there's this quote I quote this guy, Naval, a lot. He's an angel investor and philosopher. And he has a great book out or someone wrote it for him. It's called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. So in that book, he talks about how early in life, if you get rejected a lot, it's really a gift, because it will force you to kind of do your own thing and go on your own path. And that was 100% my situation, because even other than the soccer, which I would consider those injuries like a type of rejection, like I was not given what I wanted, which was, a great career with soccer. But even in high school, there were times where in high school, I used to be really outgoing in middle school, when I was really younger. And then high school, I started to get really shy, and I would take things really personally, and I had really bad skin, and I was really anxious all the time. And then
I can totally relate to that, by the way. I also had terrible skin in high school, so I know how that feels.
Mine was so bad. And and another thing is with soccer, and this is a trait that I'm still working on today, but is I would go in like freshman year, and I would have a bad practice, or I'd have a bad injury, a bad day with an injury I was dealing with, and I would just like stay in my room and not talk to anybody, because I take it so personally, even though it wasn't. It was just a sport, and there's two sides to that, I think. But like I said, I think that rejection I had early on is a gift in the sense that it made me hungry still. And like the moment I stopped playing soccer, I just felt like I had, one, so much time now, but two, I had so much to prove. I had so much hunger to still like create something. And so I think if I had the best soccer career ever, it might have not been in my favor long term.
That's so powerful, by the way. I feel like there's a lot to unpack with your story, but
sure.
I think something that really sticks out to me is kind of this idea of, when we have our life planned out for us, right? And we have this trajectory of what we're either expected to do or what we think we're going to thrive in, everything sort of seems like it's painted out.
Yeah.
I feel like, at least in my experience, a lot of times when those things unravel and they fall apart, it's actually leading you towards something way better than you could have even, thought about in the moment. So it sounds like that's absolutely how soccer was for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, the things that have happened in the last few years, I mean, I can almost confirm if soccer had went smoothly, they would not have happened. And on a big time, a long time scale, for the rest of my life, I'm really glad those things did.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. I know for me too, I've had a lot of things fall apart and not pan out the way I wanted them to. And that was part of why I started this podcast was, losing my job and the pandemic starting. And that was like the push that I needed to go for it. So I think for people listening to this, I think they're going to be really inspired by that, because sometimes we get so caught in our heads that, we're supposed to be set on this. Like for you, you're probably so caught on the idea of soccer was like your thing. And sometimes when that thing falls apart, we realize we actually have so much more to offer.
Yeah. It's like, I talk about it on Instagram a few times, and it's like, I called it like, a lot of times when you lose something like that, that's so core to like who you are, or like core to your identity, it makes you question everything. I think that's why like breakups are also, they do something similar, where it's like your whole, that like veneer you had over what life was and what your plan was is kind of torn down. And now it's like, all right, what do I actually want to do? What do I actually think I'm capable of? Where do I really want to be? And it's in those moments where like kind of like your ego is just destroyed, where like you get to reinvent yourself a little bit. And I think I was gifted with a lot of those moments. I call it a gift, and like, but it's hard. It's hard to realize in the moment. And a lot of people, like you said with your story, that happened to a lot of people in this pandemic, I think, where they had their situation changed massively, whether it be work or relationship or anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love your mindset of kind of how you think of things now in hindsight. And it's so hard to do in the moment. Like you said, it's so hard to deal with a breakup or a huge loss or something that really derails you. But something that I've learned in my experience too is, in hindsight, it really is a gift, you know. I'm actually the most thankful for some of the things and the relationships in my life that have like fallen apart, because they're almost always a catapult to something that's even better. But that's a real huge thing that you talk about, I feel like, a lot with your page and your message, is the mindset, right? I think that mindset is so powerful. I mean, it really starts everything. So obviously the soccer was a part of it for you, but what else has sort of, contributed to your mindset, really a growth mindset of just continuing to overcome?
Continuing to overcome. I think it's well, I guess about fitness. I mean, like in that time when I'll start back like where I was with the story basically. That point was where I really started working out heavily, and like my transformation picture, whatever you want to call it, just from being skinny like to literally a few months later was and I had worked out a little bit, so the picture's a little deceiving. It wasn't like, it was like a bad picture and then like a good, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it was still significant because I was just in the gym, like, I don't want to say torturing myself because it's not a good word, but like just going into like a cave of like self-imposed I'm gonna use the word pain, because it's like just like working out really hard, and through all that watching myself physically change a little bit, but that little bit so much in that time, and that was honestly the first step. And I think a lot of people go through that in the gym. It's like it's a physical transformation, but it becomes a mental transformation. And the gym is like the most like tangible manifestation of that, where you work hard, you struggle on purpose, and you're going to see the rewards soon enough. And I guess now it's like now I think it builds on itself. It's a matter of committing to things and accomplishing those things when you never thought you could. And that was basically what that led to. At the time I was working for a photo booth company. So what that is they basically go to weddings and sweet 16s with these modern types of photo booths. And this was me working for another company. I worked for them for about 2 summers while I was at school, and just basically had no weekends. I would just work every single weekend doing these events all the time. And then what happened was I actually went back to Binghamton after I came home, and I went back to Binghamton to finish my degree. I had 2 years left. But when I went up there, I started this photo booth company in Binghamton, which is kind of middle of nowhere. I don't know if you've ever been up there.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's kind of middle of nowhere, but that in the gym is the only reason I started that company. Like, just
really?
Yeah, like it wouldn't have happened if I didn't go through that time. And like I said, I contribute to working out a lot to that. Just like there's something magical that happens there that it's hard to explain, but the things that happen in your brain when you're training consistently and putting those chemicals in your brain, it can really change your mind about what you're capable of, I think. And yeah, so I started that company, went back to school, and I was going back to be a doctor. I was pre-med.
Oh, wow.
Because we don't have to go on talk about this too much, but I'm a big believer in like mimetic theory. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's like this guy, Rene Girard, came up with it a long time ago. Basically says that all we're doing is copying what the humans around us are doing. So to apply it to me, like growing up, all I was going to do was play college soccer, because that's what everyone around me was doing. And then I was like, all right, what am I going to do now? So I had the business aspirations, but you know what it is, Long Island especially too, it's a very trying to think of the right word without offending any Long Islanders listening to it. It's very traditional. There's not a lot of I don't know of many young entrepreneurs, or
neither do
there's
I.
entrepreneurs. Yeah, a lot of them are older. There's not many people doing stuff on social media like you and me. It's very go to college, get a good job, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But so basically what happened was I went back to school and I'm like, all right, what are people around me doing that looks good? All right, pre-med it is. And so I did that while doing the business. And yeah, like what you're saying before, what helps me like keep growing, it's just committing to things and accomplishing them. And I think the more you do, the more it makes you ask yourself, hey, what am I capable of doing? And like and can keep expanding it from there. And so that's what kind of happened to me. Is I was in Binghamton and doing the pre-med classes, and I was always okay student, just because like I had a decent work ethic. I could sit down and study and force myself to learn it. But my like, I was just being pulled somewhere else, which was the stuff of the business, which I'm not passionate about photo booths. I'm not, but I love the technical aspect of business and I'll even say scientific side in terms of, marketing and psychology and sales. And I was really drawn there. And that's kind of my story there.
Yeah. Wow. I don't even know where to start.
I go on some rants. I tried to answer your question.
No, that's okay.
I thought it'd be good to like finish my like college story.
Yeah, no. That's awesome. The one thing I was thinking before I like dive into more, that theory that you were talking about of everyone around you, is that the same thing as like the 5 or 6 people you surround yourself with are who you'll be the sum of? Have you heard of that?
Yeah, similar, I think.
Yeah,
similar idea.
Like reminds me of that.
Yeah,
which I think is true.
Yeah, it's true, I think. But it's tough. It's really hard, especially when you grow up and you're not, I mean, it's easier for like us, because we have the social media, the internet. And, I grew up, like, I can tell you the odds of me starting a business would probably be 0 if I didn't follow people on social media, but it's a different time now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a part of it too is, for what it's worth, it is scary to go against the grain, I think, no matter what it is. If everyone around you is following the same narrative. It was similar for me too. I went to college for English and communication, and I thought I was going to have a career in healthcare advertising, and I hated it. I quit my corporate job. I just knew, like you said, that pull that you felt towards that business, that entrepreneurial side, it was the same for me. I felt a pull in that same direction. So if you're feeling that pull, like if you're listening to this and you feel that pull somewhere, listen to it. I'm telling you, that is probably a part of your life purpose to be pursuing that path. So yeah,
I agree completely.
Yeah. So that kind of leads you to where you are now. So it's this whole crazy journey of a bunch of injuries, unfortunately, which I'm so sorry about that.
No, they're fine though.
Yeah. But it seems like, like you said, everything's been a gift. So it's kind of, led you to where you are now. So from the photo booth starting, right? You started that in Binghamton. So what led you from the photo booth now to behavior hack? Where did that come into play?
Yeah, so I'll explain it quickly and kind of what my plan is with the page, like going forward. So I've always been kind of attracted to having some type of online like audience. Like I always like I wouldn't consider myself like an influencer because the page is not very personal, but people who had audiences, and I think the paradigm is shifting, and it's some people are like, I think you've kind of realized it, and some more and more people are realizing it, where I'm a big fan of people putting stuff out on the internet just in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't even have to be your name. I think there's a lot of benefits to putting your name out, but I think, like I tweeted this the other day, it's like the old model is you find connections and those will create work for you, but now you can create work for yourself and connections will find you. Like I'm sure you've met a ton of people who just reached out to you just from stuff you post online.
It's so powerful. Yeah,
and that never would have happened if you didn't do that. And so I'm a really big believer, like long term, in just the power of creators and whatever platform you do that on, in terms of attracting things to you and creating opportunities and creating optionality for yourself with whatever you want to do, whether it be start a podcast like you, or you see tons of people starting brands, or even just writing a book. Like if you want to write a book now, I mean, the best way to do it is to build an audience for a few years, see what kind of content they like, and take that content and write a book. Like, have you heard of the book Atomic Habits?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. That's how he did that. He wrote for a long time. I think he committed to like 2 blog posts. James Clear is the author. Amazing book. Whoever hasn't read it yet. And he posted 2 blog posts a day, and over time realized that his audience was really resonating with habits. And then he, put out a bunch of content on habits and crafted into this amazing bestseller. And so that's how Behavior Hack kind of started. So I wanted somewhere where I could kind of brand and put together the stuff I was learning and going through into some type of content. Yeah. And with the photo booth, to talk about that too. So I'm a big believer in like, it's kind of, I'm contrarian in a lot of things. I try not to like do it too much, but I just am. But but there's a thing now where being contrarian has also become popular. So it's almost like what's actually contrarian. Anyway, um, I'm a big believer in like following opportunity before passion, because like I have all these passions I want to do, all these things I want to create, and I'm still like behavior act. What I post there is like my passion. It's what I love doing. I love like talking about that kind of stuff. But for the photo booth, for me, that is by far like my best opportunity right now, just because I think Seth Godin, have you heard of him? He's like
I've heard the name, yeah.
Yeah, marketer, author. I might be misquoting him, but he says try to be the best in the world at something. And he's not saying be the best like on earth, but be the best like in your world, whatever that is. And so for me, if I can create one of the biggest photo booth companies in the US, I think I should do that. And that will give me the time and freedom to pursue my passions with complete freedom and optionality, no pressure, and have more resources to do so. So that's kind of my big plan there. It's actually a reason why lately I've been a little quieter on especially Instagram and social media in general. The photo booth company is extremely busy with events coming back. And yeah, and so basically I'm kind of going all over the place, but
that's okay.
I took that company from upstate and then kind of came to Long Island and New York and added a bunch of new things. And say this to any entrepreneur who's listening or aspiring entrepreneur, like what I just said about opportunity versus passion is, I think, a really important thing. I think I see a lot of people trying to start these really, really ambitious projects. And the problem is that, especially if you're a solo operator, extremely difficult. And you're going to be often like the high chances you're going to fail, and you might be discouraged from starting something in the future. And so what I did, and this is what I recommend all people do, especially on Long Island, there's a lot of places like Long Island, and is find a business where there's plenty of people wanting it, but where people are either old or lazy, or there's something you can do that is an advantage. So to put it simply, like there's a ton of photo booth companies on Long Island, but none of them were really using technology well. None of them were advertising that well online. None of them have a great website, and none of them like did different things. So I did that, created these unique packages, created like the first ever TikTok photo booth in the world, which is pretty cool.
That's
cool.
That
was like one of my big things. And we do these cool flower walls and hedge walls and yeah, so it's doing really well now. And obviously it was pretty dead last year, but kind of spent the time just doing a lot of booking. And so this year will be pretty crazy. And yeah.
Yeah, I think that's such a smart, that's great. I think it's a really smart approach, because I know for myself too, like what you said about kind of focusing in on one opportunity versus passion. Like I have like 80,000 projects in my head that I'm like, oh, it would be so cool if I did this, or like, oh my God, I should go do that. But you got to just focus on one thing at a time. And that's something that I really struggle with, is because I have so many different things I want to do. And I feel like a lot of people in the entrepreneurial mindset can fall into that, right? It's so hard to focus and stay within your niche and like, do all this stuff. But I think it's really smart to keep the opportunity in mind.
I completely agree. You were like glitching a little bit.
Oh no, that's okay. Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I know it does that sometimes. It's okay.
Yeah, like you can do it all, but you definitely can't do it all at once. And like I've learned that the hard way so much, and I still am learning that. And especially last year, I learned that the hard way. I tried to do too much at once, and it just resulted in everything kind of falling. And I'm the type of person where if I'm not 100% in, it's really hard for me to do it.
Yeah.
But I think that, like what you said, it's a good thing. Following opportunity and focusing on one thing at a time is the best way to do it.
Yeah, definitely baby steps, focus, especially I agree with you. I'm very much the same way. Like I don't want to do 5 things at 80%. Like I want to do one thing and do it really well. So I think to anyone listening to, that would be really good advice. But something else that you were kind of alluding to with what you were saying that I think is really important and so specific to this time that we're in now is that anyone can do this. I think this is the first time in history where, people aren't gatekeeping industries in the same way. Like you don't need a publisher to write a book. You don't need an agent to find, connections. Like you can literally just start, if you're trying to start a podcast, just record on your phone. Like you can start it in your house. Like you don't need anyone. And I think that this is such a pivotal time for people who are trying to be entrepreneurs to take advantage of that and and hop in now when really the world is your oyster. I mean, you can start from the bottom and really make a presence online at least.
Yeah, it's it's like the most rewarding path is like usually the least rewarding at the start. So I think people think of the idea of like starting a social media account, having 0 followers. And it's like people are gonna laugh at me, and people aren't gonna. And I'm talking to social media, but business is the same thing. You start a venture, it's a risk. You're putting your name out there, you're putting yourself out there, and people are afraid to do it. When I think sometimes that's just the hardest part sometimes. And once you get started, you realize how quickly you can gain traction. And like for you, like and for me too, it's like when I just started the page, like I think I started about 2 years ago, but like just having one person reach out to you saying that what you created meant something to them, it's like, that's really all you need when you're getting started. And that'll force you to keep pushing. And yeah, what you said, I completely agree with. There's no more gatekeepers. And Shopify, if you want to start a store, you're talking, $30, even less sometimes. Like the cost of failing is close to zero. And it's definitely a different time. And I think we're so early. And I think also like an important point is it doesn't have to be a rush. Like I'm sure you probably plan on putting content out for a while, right?
Yeah, I'm just getting started.
You're just getting started. Like, and I'm the same way. Like I don't want to do this forever. I definitely don't. And I'm still figuring out. It doesn't, my opinion is it doesn't have to ever be finite. You can always change, but I'm still figuring out which mediums I love the most. Like me, I mostly like writing, just like what comes naturally to me. But sometimes like I like doing podcasts like this, and like I like talking. So you don't have to have it all figured out at the start. And if you look at it as something that's a long-term plan, something you'll do for a long time, I think it becomes easier.
That's such a great point of, not having to have it all figured out. I mean, rarely do we ever, when I started this, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no experience with the podcast or editing or doing any of that. And I've just been seeing where it's taken me, and kind of like you, I'm in the same position. Like, I'm not really sure if I want to push YouTube more or really focus on Instagram or even like private coaching. But like you said, this is the kind of thing where if you're diving into this space, you have time to figure it out, especially if you're doing it on the side of something else. So take the time to explore what's the opportunity, right? Like they're all passions, but where is the opportunity really coming? I think is important.
I agree. Yeah. And like you were saying, it's like the beautiful thing about content that I think people like whenever people ask me for advice, which happens sometimes, and people ask like, how do you grow an account, whatever, it's always like, you have to like fall in love with like the data and like look at what people are actually responding to, because it's all in front of you. Like there's a phrase like consult your timeline, don't consume it. And what I do is like when I look at people, especially like people that are doing stuff like what I do, is like I look at a feed, right? But instead of looking at it like just text, I'll look at the numbers and be like, all right, this post extremely good, this post horrible, this post good, this post bad. And there's patterns that make sense. And those patterns only become visible when you start putting things out there, for yourself, I mean. And because it's valuable to look at that on your timeline, but also more valuable to look at it for yourself. Like for me, and sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not, but a lot of the content I post, I've already reposted or I've repurposed it in some way. And that's not, just because I'm lazy. It's because like your hits are hits for a reason,
Yeah.
And there are subjects people want to see. And like I said, you don't have to have it figured out. You figure it out when you put something out there.
That's huge too. You got to try, you have to explore. That's something that I'm still, figuring out with my Instagram, especially is, do people like the long videos? Do they like reels? Do they want, really long, verbose captions of what's going on in my mind? Like you got to just try, you have to put yourself out there. You're never going to know until you do.
I completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So would you have any other, advice to anyone if they're particularly looking to kind of start their own business, like not necessarily just social media?
Yeah, like I said, number one, I would say just from my experience starting stuff on my own, I've started a bunch of projects, most of them have failed, and I got lucky. Really the first thing I started, I guess you could say, did succeed. I mean, I say success, like, it succeeded to some extent where I think it'll be, pretty big business one day. But like I said before, opportunity versus passion, it has to be number one. And most people, like there's levels to that though. Like I think if you're going to follow your passion and we just want to live at home and like really struggle and put and just wait years, that like there's nothing wrong with that, but it's going to take a long time. And I think there's something else to, and usually it won't work. A lot of times the thing you're passionate about is not what's going to be profitable. There's another thing too, which is like, let's say you meet an artist, right? And they want to start like a, trying to think, like, nah, artist isn't a great example. So you make a woodworker and he wants to start a woodworking company. I don't know if that's a thing, but if
I'm
it's
sure
going to be,
it
it is, yeah. If he wants to build a big company, he's not going to be the one doing it. He's going to have employees. And so what you're really doing as an entrepreneur is managing people and making decisions. And I think people forget that. And so, I would say to starting entrepreneurs, the best thing to do is a service, especially a digital service. But even in-person service is actually, I would say, lower barrier to entry. And kind of like I was talking before, like that's what I do. And in a lot of ways, it sucks. I'll be honest. You're handling equipment, you have to manage people, but there's opportunity because a lot of times those industries are where people are not very adapted to, online advertising and websites, and you can really have an advantage. There's like a crazy statistic I saw the other day, and it was someone who said he was like calling just for like house repairs, and he said like literally less than 10% of companies picked up the phone.
No way.
Yeah, no, but can't you believe that though? Like,
I mean, yeah,
I can kind of believe that. And I mean, I don't know. I just think if you're a young hustling kid and you want to start a company, just figure out a service you can provide or you can get someone to provide and start doing that and do it better than everyone around you. That's what I'd say.
That's some really like smart, sound advice. And it honestly just comes down to, it sounds like being, methodical and sort of calculated about it. Don't just dive into some industry because like you said, it might be something you're passionate about. If you're woodworking and nobody's buying homemade woodwork, it's probably not going to be that profitable. But especially I think with our age demographic in particular, there's so much opportunity for, like you said, some of these businesses that are mainly older people who aren't as adept to social media or advertising. Like that's definitely seems like a huge place to tap into.
Yeah, if you're listening, there's a great, I'm really into Twitter lately, so I'm like citing Twitter a lot, but there's a great guy on Twitter. His name's Nick Huber. He runs a blog called Sweaty Startup. And he talks about exactly what I'm talking right now, which is like, get your hands dirty. Don't try to start the next $1 billion thing, get your hands dirty and launch a service business and do it with technology. He talks all about this stuff, and so go check that out. Google that if you want more information there.
What was that? Sweaty palms or sweaty startup?
Sweaty startup.
Sweaty startup. Okay.
Yeah, it's good. I like it.
I'll have to look into that. That sounds interesting.
It's cool. Yeah. And that's what I'd say there.
Yeah, that's all.
I have a lot of friends who try to start really massive projects, and it just, I think when you're doing, especially when you're starting out alone, it's harder than people think.
It's so easy to get discouraged too, like you said, if you're not seeing that instant gratification of, the numbers or the results that you want, especially with such a huge, if it's like a huge idea, right? Mm-hmm. And then that can trickle over. I think you mentioned this earlier too, into being discouraged to try anything else because you said, oh, well, that first project was a failure. So like, I'm doomed now. Like, that's probably the worst mindset trap to be in.
But it happens a lot. I think it happens a lot. And, it's not a good thing.
No, definitely not. You just got to keep going. Eventually something is going to click. And if you think about what you're passionate about, I think it's absolutely possible to tie your passion in. It just might take a little bit of time, like you said.
I think there's also something to like, kind of like, honestly, this is what I'm doing on a bigger time scale, is just thinking on a longer time scale for your passion. And like what I'm doing on my page, there's a lot of things I want to do with it. But I mean, at first, especially, I had almost no idea. I just knew I wanted to get some people following me. I had some ideas that I wanted to share. And there's something to that where, follow an opportunity now, but work on your passion on the side. And that's kind of what I've been following. And I recommend that to people.
Yeah.
But that's just my experience. It's not right for everybody. But.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I think it's a great perspective, keeping the long-term vision in mind is because it's so easy. Like, I know for me, it's so easy to get, lost in just the moment of, oh, I'm going to do this, 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 and this, and I'm going to try this. And, long-term, like 8, 10 years, 15 years from now, it's like, do you have a blueprint for that? Do you have an idea, of what you're even going to try to do? Like, it's all important stuff to think about, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, this has been amazing. I want to give you some time to plug yourself here. So where can people find you?
Sure. Also, can we talk about one more thing?
Yeah, of course.
Something I wanted to talk about here, because your podcast is called The Philosophy of Fitness, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, I have something like, so I've been obsessed lately with this one thing, which is like where great ideas come from, right? And this is just like a note. I think this will help anyone who's listening because it's really helped me. And I'm sure you've experienced this, but like, do you ever get like great ideas while you're like riding a bike or working out?
All the time.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot, and because like something I've really in general where great ideas come from, because I think right now I've been posting about this a bit. There's kind of a new plague which is happening, which is like the plague of content and social media and information, and it's kind of under discussed because it's in general seen as a positive, which is reading books, listening to podcasts like you're listening right now, following positive accounts on social media. These are generally seen as good things. But I think what's happening with people spending so much time online and there's so much to learn is there's too much. And there's too much content coming in. There's too much information coming in. And so I just want to give this advice to anybody, especially if you're doing something with business or social media. It can sometimes feel like there's so much to learn and there's so much, and you have to force yourself and you have to get all this information. But what I've experienced, because I've gone through this process of, there's been times where, my screen time is insane. I'm sure most people have those days. And the best ideas always come when you're not trying to force them. And especially when you're doing something like lifting or running or biking. And I can't say that enough. It's actually something I've noticed lately. I don't know if you've noticed this, that a lot of people, whether they be like writers or entrepreneurs or anybody creative, especially, they always say they have their best ideas when they're walking or running.
Yeah. I have my best ideas when I'm going for a run. I think it's just, unplugging and coming back to yourself, I think is so powerful. And it's so underrated these days with what you're saying of just this constant surge of every quote, every book coming our way, And
it's part of the reason I've been posting a little less, because I'm trying to find a better solution to the problem. It's like I talk about not consuming content on social media, yet I'm posting content on social media. Like I like to think I say it the most out of any person on social media. I try to. Is like, you don't need to be reading this. Like just go. Because especially on Instagram, it's just like, okay, so many quotes, so much of this. Like, what is this? I mean, it's also a byproduct of me spending a lot of time like in that space. And there's definitely a huge benefit to someone who needs to hear that stuff. But that's just my advice. If you're a little stuck, you just got to turn it off for a little bit and go for a run or go work out. And usually that's when the answers come.
That's so true.
That's it. Nice way to end it.
That's so powerful. Even in the shower too, honestly, like I'll be hopping out of the shower, writing a note on my phone, like the great idea,
Yeah. That's what always happens. Yeah. Create a good way to capture those ideas too. Cause that's when they always come, is when you don't expect it. It's like, I thought of this the other day. I'm going to make a post about it later, or a newsletter or something. And it's like with new areas cause right now, I don't know about you, but for me, like I'm really into like crypto and like that whole space. But no matter what you're into, there's so much to learn right now. Like so much is changing, whether it be stuff with social media. But I found the best way to learn is just to create something, put something out there. But let's say you really want to gain a understanding is, dive in, consume a bunch of stuff, but then, let yourself float a little bit and just like, let it simmer and go for a walk, go for a run. And that's when everything will hit you and things will click, because things don't click when you're trying to force them to click. And that's really last note.
That's the key takeaway right there. The more you try to force something, the more resistance you put into it. It's just like it pushes the idea further and further away. So sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is just like take a step back, think about it. I think there's something to be said about that too. Give ideas time, right? I think that's so powerful. So
I agree.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been such an amazing conversation. So now if you want to plug your links, whatever.
Sure. Nothing crazy. You can just follow me on Instagram. It's at Behavior Hack. I know some English people spell it differently. So it's BEHAVIORHACK. You can also follow me on Twitter at the same username. I'm posting a lot there. And I have a newsletter, which you can find in the link in bio on the Instagram and Twitter. And that's really it.
Yay. Well, guys, if you are listening to this, check out Behavior Hack. Follow Zach on all of his stuff. I'm telling you, you're not going to be disappointed with his content. He's amazing. He's so insightful and inquisitive. And thank you so much for coming on.
Of course. It was a great conversation. Thanks, Haley.